Hi, Promised Land parents. Thanks for joining us once again for Real Talk for Right Now. Today, I am excited to be joined by Jenni Von Tobel, who you may recognize as the Director of Special Friends at Willow Creek. And she thought that you parents would benefit from hearing from a friend of hers who's also an occupational therapist, Michele Gambrel. So why don't you two introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your families and what you do for a living. Jenni?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. Like she said, my name is Jenni Von Tobel, and I currently run Special Friends at Willow Creek, our disability ministry, together with my husband. And prior to that, I was the executive director of Gigi's Playhouse, which is a Down syndrome awareness and achievement center. There's locations all over the world. I worked at the national office here in Hoffman Estates. More importantly, I am the mother of 3 little girls. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a kindergartner who is 5. And right now, like many of you, I'm trying to achieve, which I'm not achieving, that balance of working full-time and homeschooling and everything else that's happening as we're social distancing. But I'm excited about this topic today, and I wanted Michele to join us because she's got so much wisdom in this area too, and she was instrumental in helping us build our Special Friends ministry at Willow as well. So Michele, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Again, I'm Michele Gambrel. I am a mom of 2 children. I have a 19-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. I'm also an occupational therapist, as was mentioned, and I have spent my whole career working with children, mostly in therapeutic day schools and also in the public school setting. I just really have a passion for working with vulnerable children, and it's just been my experience over the past, my whole life, my whole career. So I too have been muddling through all of this at home and having a college student back home and all of that. So we're all in the trenches together.
Yep.
I'm really glad you guys could join us today. I know it's going to be really helpful for parents to hear from some experts in the field. And today we're actually talking about something called regulation and dysregulation. You know, it's been so hard for most of our kids to deal with this social distancing and the fact that school suddenly ended for the rest of the school year. It's bringing up a lot of anxiety for our kids, and it's also making it obvious that sometimes our kids are having trouble staying regulated. So Jenni, why don't you talk about what is regulation, what is dysregulation, and what does this look like in our kids?
Yeah. I'll have Michele give the actual therapist answer to the definition of it, but I think why it's so important to talk about this is to recognize that there's a difference between your child who's throwing a tantrum because they're, being naughty versus their body is actually dysregulated and they can't help themselves. And that's where we can come in and help support them. So Michele, how would you describe the definition of regulation?
Sure. Well, really, regulation is just your ability to adjust and control your energy level. So your emotions, your behavior, your attention, and doing those things in a socially acceptable way. So a child who can self-regulate, they can concentrate on what's going on, they can share, they can take turns, all of those things when they're regulated. But it's important to remember that most children struggle with this at times. That's normal. That's completely normal. Especially, I'm sure you've noticed this yourselves, when your child is tired, they're hungry, they're facing new experiences or challenges like we are right now in our world. So when that happens, their bodies automatically become dysregulated, and they may become upset, or they're sad, or they're angry. And just trying to remember that all of those things are normal. Some specific things that you might see with your kids are that they might have more trouble sharing. So, their toys, they all of a sudden become more possessive of what they have, or they can't take turns. And you're like, wait a minute, we've gone through this. We've taught our child how to take turns. They should know this. And then all of a sudden they just want all of their toys. They can't take turns. They can't wait, and they're more impulsive, right? So you're sitting there, you're at your desk, you're trying to do a Zoom meeting for work, and you're trying to get things done or make dinner, and all of a sudden, your child asks for something and you're like, well, hold on a minute, just wait.
Yeah.
And normally they'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll wait.
Yeah.
And no way, they throw a tantrum, they have a hard time. So the waiting thing, and they're just impulsive and they want it now.
I noticed that with my 10-year-old, who's a very even keel girl, but when she's dysregulated, for her, it shows up as the big emotions, right? Like all of a sudden she will turn into a puddle of tears over what seems to be nothing. But it comes out for her in big emotions. And I think that's what's important about this idea of regulation versus dysregulation is it comes out in your body. So it could be through tears, through hitting behaviors, all that impulse control that you mentioned. So I always know with my oldest that when I tell her something and she falls into the tears, I'm like, okay, there's something here that, these big emotions, we need to help you kind of get back on track in your body. Yeah.
Sure.
I love that you guys are shedding some light on the tantrums, because I remember when my kids were throwing tantrums, you feel so helpless as a mom. You don't know what caused it. You don't know how to fix it. It kind of might even dysregulate me as a parent. Yeah. And so just to help us understand where it might come from and to normalize it, especially in this time, is very helpful.
Yeah.
Michele, you look like you had one more thing to say. I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Other than the big emotions, there are other ways that your child may experience, they might not just have trouble sharing or, being more impulsive or the big emotions. They might also show their dysregulation through simple things like forgetting how to sequence things or do things that they normally know how to do. So like getting dressed, you're like, okay, go get dressed. And all of a sudden they're like, well, wait, where do I find my clothes? What am I supposed to do next? So it can affect things that they normally would know how to do. And then all of a sudden they just sort of shut down and don't know how to do those things. So you might see things like that. Or for your older kids that, they're in high school and they're trying to concentrate on their homework on doing these Zoom meetings, and they just cannot focus and cannot concentrate, even the little ones. You're like, what the heck? You usually can sit here and do your homework with me. What's happening? Some of those things might be from this dysregulation. You also might have the child who they're sitting there and all of a sudden they're just shutting down. They're not being overreactive. They're not having the tantrum, but they're just sort of disinterested or withdrawn. Or you're like, come play a game with the family. We're all playing. And they're withdrawn or shutting down, or they're just in their own world, in their own mind, or daydreaming. So, it's just important to keep in mind that there's different levels of emotions and things happening. And you're going to see different things in different kids depending on the particular child.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to reiterate too that we are not just talking about one population of children. We are talking about children. This applies to all of our children, and I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. And so I know that those who are listening are probably screaming out the question, so what do I do now? Yeah. How do I fix this? So that's my question. How do we support our kids when they're feeling dysregulated?
Yeah, and Michele will share some specific ideas about this too. But one of the things that I have found that's really, I think, encouraging is, I love the science behind this kind of stuff. And what's actually happening when you're dysregulated, when a child or an adult is dysregulated, is the neurons in your brain are misfiring. They're firing in a disorganized fashion and often across hemispheres, across the right and left hemisphere. And we're able to regulate that often simply through movement and bilateral movement or cross-body movement, which means something as simple as walking up and down stairs. Anything that's right and left is what bilateral movement means. So walking up and down stairs, marching in place, cross midline movements, which would be, your right hand touching your left ankle, those kinds of things. I have a 5-year-old who needs tons of movement breaks. And it wasn't until I realized that we actually got this homeschooling thing back on track, when it was like, okay, 5 minutes of this, and then, all right, now we're going to do 5 jumping jacks, or now I want you to run all the way up to the bedroom and all the way down to the basement, and doing that right and left hemisphere those bilateral movements makes a huge difference. So that's one of the things that helps from a physical standpoint. And we'll talk about emotionally too. But Michele, did you have any other just basic activities or ideas for that?
Yeah, I think some basic things that are really important to remember are that routines and structure are so important. So trying to keep those things in place as much as possible, like just waking up at the same time every day, keeping your meals this consistent, sitting in the same spot that you normally do at dinner, keeping the bedtime routine consistent, going to bed at the same time. Even though our world is changing, you might have the same demands. You could stay up later, you could sleep in later. I think it's really, really important to stick to those routines as much as you can.
Can I ask a question about that, Michele? Because I know that in some ways, parents are also being encouraged to not worry so much about sticking to the structure, like giving ourselves permission to let go. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not suggesting that we never go off the structure, but to keep the structure as much as possible.
Definitely. Right? Yep. And that ties into exactly what I was going to say next is, throwing some simple fun things into that routine that you normally don't do. So like having family game night that you throw in, or, every night after dinner, but before bedtime, we're going to do this craft together, or do this game together, or just throwing something fun into there. And, deviating from your routine is going to happen. It has to happen. There's too much craziness going on, but yes, you're exactly right. You have to be flexible. That's the name of the game right now.
Yesterday we had such a stressful day of trying to work and trying to do homeschooling. And finally I was like, who wants to play hide and seek? And they were like, are you going to play? And yeah, of course. And we just played a game of hide and seek. And it was just what we all needed to sort of reset, recalibrate, like, okay, take a breath, and just kind of, then we were able to come back and do the things that we needed to do. So yeah, I think there's the importance of like structure, maybe starting and ending your day the same, but then within it, allowing for what needs to happen that day.
Exactly. And the other thing you can do to tie in with that is give your kids a schedule, even the older ones, younger ones, older ones, even if you write it down or have a dry erase board or have a piece of paper and you just say, this is what's going to happen today. Mom and dad are going to work from these times. You're going to do your schoolwork from these times. We're going to have lunch around this time, dinner around this time. Just embed some structure in an actual schedule where you're writing it down. It really helps kids to see the big picture so they know what's coming next and what to expect. And if they do get impulsive and they're like, Mom, I need to do this now, you can say, oh, look, we're going to do that in about a half an hour. So it gives them something to hold on to.
Yeah, that is so great, because I think as parents, we have the structure or the plan in our brains, but we don't think to share it with the kids. So that's a wonderful reminder that let the kids in on it, show them what it looks like.
And it gives them that control to put a sticker on it or cross it off or erase it from the dry erase board. Then they feel like they have a little bit of in it, which helps too. Yeah.
And if you can add a timer or say a countdown to it. So like if they're having difficulty waiting for lunch and it's only, 15 more minutes, you could even set a timer and say, in 15 minutes, we're going to have lunch. Here's the timer. You can watch or check back. Or sometimes it's really hard for kids to transition away from something fun and then back into schoolwork or into something you need them to do. So you could use a timer for that, or you can count down, say, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. And then after those 10 seconds, we're going to head over and, sit at our computer and do our schoolwork or whatever it is. So those timers and those verbal reminders can be super helpful. Some kids might even need more of a structured, we say visual support, which a calendar, writing it down, things like that are visual. And you might even have to go as far as writing a story and saying, this is what we're doing. We're gonna do this activity, or this is why this is happening. And that's a little bit more complicated, but if people need more direction in that area, they could always email Jenni or you and, get some more information on how to get those specifics. But those stories can sometimes help.
Great. Did you have one or two more that you want to share with us, or I want to make sure we got through your list?
Those are the more the structural ones. I do have some ideas if you want more about the physical activities or some other strategies. Would you like me to discuss those?
Yep, we have a couple minutes to do that.
Yeah. And
Sure.
maybe the breathing too, Michelle. Let's talk about the breathing too, since that's a huge part of helping re-regulate.
Sure. So some, as Jenny mentioned, gross motor activities are just extremely beneficial in helping your child regulate their body. So movement in particular has been researched, and just being able to move really helps regulate. So anything you can do to get up and move, simple things, wheelbarrow walks through your house, different animal walks. Yoga is a great activity. And if you just Google yoga, there's so many fun little ones for kids. My favorite one, and what a lot of kids like, is cosmic yoga. Stick it up there on YouTube, and the kids just love to do that. You could, if you have a mini tramp, the kids love jumping on the mini trampoline. Or if you don't, you can get a couch cushion, throw it on the ground. They can, if you're okay with that, or old couch cushion, jumping on that. If you have a swing, swings back and forth, slow movement is so regulating for kids to just be able to swing. If you don't have a swing and you have another adult in the house, you could, do the old, put them in a sheet and swing them back and forth, if they're little, of course. Rough and tumble play, squishing them between the couch cushions, or making a fort. Heavy work jobs, those are huge. And what I mean by that is lifting and pulling and pushing. So those movements are shown to really be able, when you have that input to your joints and muscles, it really helps regulate the body. So you could have them even do things like help you carry in the heavy groceries, the big cans, a bag full of cans, or the gallon of milk. Or you can have them help you with gardening. It's spring, we're all gardening, help give them a shovel and out there doing that heavy gardening. So those are some fun things you could do. And of course, the old, go for a bike ride, go for a walk. If you're outside, you could do a hopscotch or something out on the sidewalk with, or sensory walks are a big term right now. You could do a sensory walk where you draw a different pattern on your sidewalk or driveway and have your kids jump in different ways.
I wonder where we could get like a visual of some of these outside things. Jenny, do you know?
Well, we happen to know because Michele created a sidewalk, almost like an obstacle course. It was like the hopscotch and then jump on this and this. And all of a sudden it got 4 million views. It has been shared all over the world. And that just shows you how helpful and impactful something like that is, that so many parents are like, oh my gosh, I need to share this and copy this and do this on my own sidewalk. I know we did it too. So we'll share that with you, Jennifer, so that you can Promiseland Facebook page. I'm sure many parents have already seen it, but that has been super effective for so many kids. And
it's nothing new or novel that I made up or did. This is something that people have been doing for years. We do it in schools, on the floor, but it's just exciting that, you could do it. It just shows that you can do it in your own backyard, on your sidewalk. And it's so helpful. So it's exciting that people are using those things. So it's great.
Well, I know that you guys wanted to make sure you closed with some encouragement for parents.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I have 3 girls, like I said, and they're all so different, and they're reacting to the social distancing so different. I have everything from the tantrums to the tears to the, I'm ignoring all of this and everything is fine. But what I have noticed with some of my kids is that sometimes all they need is to just sit on my lap and have me hold them. And it actually is a form of sensory input, that like hugging and squeezing. And I think it gives them that comfort that they need. They feel safe, they feel protected. Since this started, my youngest has climbed back into bed with us. So that's that cue that like, okay, so she needs a little bit more feeling safety. And so, yeah, just being intentional about holding them a little bit more as needed. The other thing is you can't help your kids regulate if you're not regulated yourself. And so just giving us as parents a break, that's what I would always want to encourage our fellow parents is all of those ideas Michele just shared are amazing. And if you do one of them a day, great. If you do 0 of them a day, it's okay, right? Like if you just get through the day, sometimes that counts too. And so to take care of yourself as well. Yeah.
I love that you said that, because I was thinking you've given us so many practical tools here and kind of shed some light on some of the questions we probably had as parents about why is my kid doing this. So I'd want to rewatch this again just to take notes, but I also want to rewatch it again through the lens of myself as a parent, and how can I apply what you've shared to myself when I need the re-regulating. So thank you both so much for joining us for this really, really helpful content. And parents, if you have any more questions for either of these guests, I'll encourage you to email Jenni Von Tobel, and then she will forward things to Michele as she needs to. So you can email her at jvontobel@willowcreek.org, jvontobel@willowcreek.org. So yeah, once again, thank you for being here. Parents, thank you for being here. I want to give you permission to get dysregulated and also encourage you that now we have some tools to re-regulate. And so we are with you in this. We're going to practice it right alongside you. And we hope that you guys see some great results. Hope to have you back here again for Real Talk for Right Now.